Okay. So Tanshi Kiwao, hello everyone, and welcome to our event this afternoon titled Indigenous Internship Programs in Academic Libraries, hosted by the Indigenous Knowledge Standing Committee of the Council of Prairie and Pacific University Libraries. I want to welcome you to this event. It's really awesome to have everyone here. My name is Ashley Edwards. My dad's family is Red River Métis from the St. Francis Xavier area, where they took scrip, and more contemporarily Portage la Prairie. He moved to BC as a child, where he met my mom, and so I'm a citizen of Métis Nation, BC, having was born and raised on Stalo Tamuk or Stalo territory. I am coming to you today from an office at Simon Fraser University Library, where I am the Indigenous Initiatives and Instruction Librarian, as well as a PhD student in the Faculty of Education. I want to acknowledge that SFU Burnaby campus is located on the shared territories of Hamasquim, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam First Nations. And the area around Burnaby Mountain is known as in Squamishnim as Thukthaqaiquetin, referencing the arbutus trees and ever-peeling trees. We have a really great event lined up for today. So I'm just going to run through a couple of logistics. So hopefully as everybody got the message that the event is being recorded. We won't be recording the question and answer period just so that folks feel comfortable unmuting or asking questions. And sometime after the event, I'm not sure of the exact logistics on that. The recording will be available through the COPPUL website, and so look for that and feel free to share it with folks who are interested and couldn't make it today. There will be about 20 minutes for questions and answers at the end of the session, but feel free to pop in any questions that you have into the chat. We'll be monitoring that the best that we can. And if you would like to ask a question anonymously, you can direct message me your question and I will ask it during the Q&A portion, obviously without including your name. How today's going to go is we've got 4 groups of questions for the interns and former interns, about 10 questions in total. We'll have everyone have an opportunity to answer those or speak to those. And then 5 questions for the administrators who are joining the talk today. So it's a bit of the logistics, and I'm going to pass it over to our panelists to do an introduction. You can go through the order that is on the screen or however works for all of you.
Go ahead, Anne, you're first.
Okay. I'm Anne Carwigan. I'm of Scottish and English heritage. And actually, I'm speaking to you today from the land of some of my ancestors, which is not usually where I am. Usually I live in a Miskwishiwas Gaigan, Treaty 6 and Métis territory. And I coordinate some of the Indigenous initiatives at the University of Alberta Library, including the First Nations and the Indigenous Internship. Yeah. And Michaela is next.
Hi, I'm Michaela LeBlanc, and I'm a Métis citizen with Métis Nation of Saskatchewan, and my ancestral roots are to Red River, and I'm one of the Indigenous interns at the U of A Library.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leah Rind. I'm a former Indigenous intern with the University of Alberta Libraries. I grew up in Devon, Alberta, which is along the banks of the North Saskatchewan River, pretty close to Edmonton. So I was born and raised in Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis. I'm Métis myself, with some of my family names being Peranto and Fisher, with roots in Duck Lake, Saskatchewan and the Red River area. I currently work at Devon Public Library, my hometown library, as a program coordinator for all ages. So I'm happy to be joining you today.
Hi, everyone. I guess I'm next. My name is Lisa O'Hara, and I'm the University Librarian and Vice Provost Libraries at the University of Manitoba, which is on the land of the Anishinaabeg, Innuwak, Dakota, Oyote people, and the Dene people, sorry, and of course the homeland of the Red River Métis. My mother's family is Métis and from the same area as Ashley's. although we didn't know each other, of course. And I'm really happy to be here today to talk about our program. So I will pass over to Lyle.
Hi, I'm Lyle Ford, Senior Lead Indigenous Engagement at the U of M. I've been here since 1998. I'm Red River Métis too, a citizen of the MMF. My family comes from around Selkirk, but they cleared out to Fort Frances, Ontario during the Terror. And I've got a sister who's Swampy Cree and another sister who's from the Cree Nation of Quebec. Happy to be here, Marcy.
My name is Shirley Delorme Russell, and I am one of the Indigenous librarian interns at the University of Manitoba. I am, Delorme is my mom. She's Métis from right here. I'm in Winnipeg, right here, about 2 blocks away she was born. And Russell is my dad, who is in Anishinaabe from Thunder Bay. And this is pretty cool. Thank you.
Bonjour, hello everyone. My name is Claire Settee. I'm Anishinaabe on my mom's side from Hollow Water First Nation and Omishkego and Scottish Métis on my dad's side from Matheson Island and Fisher River Cree Nation. And I am the second Indigenous librarian intern at the University of Manitoba. And yeah, I'm really excited.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you all for being here. So what I've done with the questions that were developed for today was to put them on slides sort of in groupings based on theme. So I'm going to open this for our interns and former interns, starting out with these questions on choosing a career in libraries. So why did you want to be a librarian? Is there a specific area of librarianship that you were interested in? And how have your experiences during the internship helped you or guide you as you move forward into your career? And I'll just open it to whoever wants to go first. I'm not going to pick on people.
Okay, I don't mind. So I didn't actually know that I wanted to be a librarian. I wanted to be a historian and then an archivist. And I learned about the opportunity at the U of M. I was like, I could be a librarian. Librarians and archivists both look after information. And if I work in a library, I can learn history. And so and I don't know what I want to be after I'm done. When I'm done, I hope to, and I have to put this on scholarship applications all the time. So they ask me, what are you going to do? My 3 standard answers, I will go back to my nation and work for the Manitoba Métis Federation, developing an archive or library, or I'll work in small community public libraries, or I'll work at the St. Boniface Archives, which is like just knee deep in history. And my experiences during the internship, so we're on 4-year terms, and I've done 2 years of my 4 years. Part of what I've been able to do at the U of M is Lyle and Lisa have cycled us through different departments. So I've worked in the archives. I'm right now in learning and instruction. I helped communications with some pictures and stuff like that. And I also get to, as part of my education, visit other libraries. So I visited lots of Winnipeg public libraries, trying to figure out if I want to be a public librarian. So yeah, that's me.
I can answer that second question there as well. So I'm kind of in a unique situation. I wasn't really sure which kind of library I wanted to work for. During my internship, I was still figuring things out. And I think it was through, working on projects at the academic library and just meeting people who had worked in all kinds of different libraries and talking to them about their experiences that I realized that I wanted to work in a smaller place, a small community library. And it was just serendipity that I ended up working for my hometown library right after graduation. It was actually 2020. So COVID was, really starting to hit hard, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do or where I was going to find work. And just by chance, a job opened up here in Devon. So I took that chance. But I think it was really through, being exposed to different jobs in the academic library space and people who had worked in special libraries and public libraries, and having the chance to really spend time with them and talk to them about their experiences, that I really was able to kind of find a direction for myself. So that was great.
I can follow up on that. So why I wanted to be a librarian, I've always just really loved books and libraries, and they've brought me so much happiness, and just I've always loved like discovering new things and following my intuitions and interests. And I think libraries are kind of like the heart of your community, and I wanted to become a librarian so that I can help take care of those places and help people use them. And I'm really enjoying the academic world right now. I would like the opportunity to work in a smaller, more community focused, or like that works with Indigenous communities more directly. But it doesn't help because every department I go to, like Shirley mentioned, we go all around to different departments, and every department has tried to convert me to say, like, you're going to be this kind of librarian. So I'm really not decided yet.
Yeah, and I've also always loved reading in books, which is like the classic library answer. But also when I was in my undergrad, I was a history major and had to do a lot of research. And I really loved that part of like writing papers, was like the research and looking for sources. And that was also kind of when it introduced me to using the library in a different way, not just for books, but having to find like online resources. And so that kind of set me on the path of wanting to be a librarian. I think that's changed a little bit now. I'm like more interested in working in other areas like archives and museums. But yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Next set of questions was sort of about the details of the internship. So a few folks have mentioned about how long was your internship? What sort of things do you get to or did you get to do in the library? And if there is a project you want to share that was most interesting to you, I think that would be interesting to all of us. What is the most valuable part of the internship? What kind of opportunities have you received as a result of being there? And is there anything you'd like to change about your time in the internship program?
I can start by answering a couple of those. My internship was about 2 years. So I started in the summer of 2018 and then ended in 2020, May, June, that time. So my favorite project that I worked on during my time at the U of A was it was an art display that was focused on themes surrounding truth and reconciliation. So we kind of did an open call to artists, both in the university community and, in the Edmonton region, to see if anyone would be interested. And I believe we had around 10 artists contribute some work, most of them Indigenous. We really did want to highlight Indigenous artwork first and foremost. But, other people were welcome to contribute as well, because we wanted to kind of highlight all kinds of different experiences and voices in that way. So it was interactive. There were interactive art pieces. And I think that was my favorite part, was kind of coordinating. There was an interactive string art piece. So everyone who visited the exhibit got to add a piece of string to this art piece. So I also worked with Gabrielle Lamontagne on that project. She was also an Indigenous intern with the U of A libraries at the time. So it was just a really, really great and challenging project to coordinate. We set it up in the Rutherford Library kind of front entrance area. So it was a lot of fun to do that.
Okay, I don't mind. So as I said, my internship is 4 years. I'm halfway through it. There was two really big deal things to me that I've done so far that kind of exhibit about being an intern. So when I was asked to make a science resource guide, a LibGuide of Indigenous authored books, only books. And the person who asked me wasn't sure what I'd find. So I just started Googling, and here's a pro tip. I started at A's, agriculture, and then I went to actuarial math. There's a whole indigenousmathematicians.org website. So that cured all of math. But it took a long time. It was a lot of work. I'd have to find papers and see who wrote the papers and see who was cited, and then go back and then see if they were Indigenous, and then see how they were Indigenous and where they were Indigenous to, and if lots of people claimed them to be Indigenous. And in the end, we got a small LibGuide highlighting the Indigenous science that happens at the University of Manitoba. And that LibGuide has been shown around, but it was tricky to do. And I was not expected to find a lot of Indigenous scientists. The other one I did was in the archives. They didn't have to convert me. I love the archives. So in the archives, I was in there for 3 months. I got to process a former U of M professor's donation. This professor was Métis. This professor taught Métis studies forever. And I got to process his stuff. And in processing his things, he was from my community. I was his community. I knew the people in the pictures. I knew the things he was talking about at the Manitoba Métis Federation. And so that, for me, really said, when you are in community, what good you can do. And that was really, really cool. Okay. I talk a lot, so I'll always.
I could go next first. Claire, you want to go?
It's okay. You can go ahead.
Yeah, my internship was 2 years as well, same as Leah. And I think one of the most valuable parts of the internship was all the different types of projects that I got to work on. I really enjoyed that they were so varied because I felt like I was introduced to many different parts of the library and in like areas I wouldn't have ever thought of to look at myself, like research impacts or something like that, where it's like very specific. So I really liked that it was like so versatile. And also one thing that not necessarily I wouldn't change, but one thing that I think I would like suggest for an internship was to have more than one intern at one time. I think it's been really great having 2 interns at the U of A library. I've worked with Amanda Robinson, and it's just been really nice to have somebody who's also like going through the same things as you, as like taking school and working, and also like being able to collaborate on projects together. And that's just been a part of the internship that I've enjoyed a lot.
I totally agree, Michaela. That's was the best part of having of this internship too, is having Shirley to go through it with. And especially having someone that like started before you too to kind of mentorship you. That's been really amazing.
Yeah, I want to jump in and highlight that as well. I really appreciated that there were interns, in other Indigenous interns working at the same time as me, and we could collaborate on projects together. And just, yeah, to have someone who's doing the same kind of work as you is so valuable. And also being able to, I was lucky enough to be able to connect with some of the interns that had come before us as well. So there was kind of that informal mentorship sort of relationship happening. And I really appreciated that. I think for me, that was the most valuable part of the internship. So, you know, if there are other organizations and libraries considering, putting together this kind of a program, I would highly recommend, if you're able to have, two interns working at the same time, working together on things. And also, I think it would be a really great thing if public libraries could jump in on this and offer public library internships as well.
What I would also say, same like, having more than one person, is one of the cool things about being an intern at the U of M specifically is the U of M has a huge Indigenous community of staff, students, professors. But specifically, the University of Manitoba Library has a bunch of Indigenous staff. 8, but those 8 are important, right? Those 8 I know, and those 8 I can complain about library things or Indigenous things, that maybe they're my safe place. And the other thing that has been really valuable is in that community that was specifically made so that we would have an Indigenous community at the U of M. We also have an Indigenous person who's our direct supervisor. And that helps a lot to have other Indigenous people who have worked at this place to understand where you are and what you're doing. Shout out to my direct supervisor who's in this meeting.
Okay, I'm going to move to the next set of questions, which is about library school. So how did you decide which program to apply to and attend? Or did you choose or prefer to take your courses online, or did you have to move for library school? And how do you find that balance of taking classes and working within a library?
I'll go. So I thought I wouldn't be able to go to library school because I could never imagine moving away from Manitoba or from my family. This place is my home. Um, so I was super excited about the online program, also because I did really well during my undergrad, during the pandemic. So I knew that I would do well in library school. So yeah, I'm really excited. I'm not starting classes until September, so I'll see. I'll update you on how classes go.
So I've done 1 year of classes now, and it's a lot. Like I've never been in grad school before, right? So I was like, seriously? Like I have to read these 500 pages this week? So it's a lot, but again, it's super well. I can't say enough about how well the U of M built this internship with all the supports inherent. So that's really cool. And I'm at the U of A because my internship program said you have to go to the U of A.
I've also found at the beginning, especially taking classes and working at the library at the same time, it was a lot and kind of overwhelming. But then it kind of became like got used to it. And I did find it was also kind of great to like take what you were learning in class and be able to apply it to like real life scenarios and like have that extra experience of working at the library. And something that's really nice about the internship was that you're able to create your own hours. So when you have like on desk shifts, those are scheduled and you can't like get rid of those or anything. But when you're working on project work, you can kind of decide like if certain weeks you have a lot of projects due for school, you're able to maybe like not work as much that week, and kind of like build your schedule like that so that it would work for you for the best.
But is one of the questions that as you all were talking right now that I realize is not on the list, but how many hours do you work in the library, roughly?
Claire, I talk a lot. You do this one.
So me and Shirley work 4 days a week, usually 8:30 to 4:30, and we have Fridays off, which is really awesome. So that'll probably be for like schoolwork, usually.
Yeah, and I would work during the school year around 15 hours a week, and kind of be like scheduled in between classes. And then during the summer, there's the option to work full time. So that's what I'm doing now.
Okay. Sorry, I'm losing my like unmute mute button. Okay. So the last group, I think it's the last group of questions and maybe like the most we'll have the most conversation around is what it's like being an Indigenous library employee and or student. Um, so I think it'd be really interesting to hear from everybody about what your experience is like in library school as an Indigenous student and the experience of being an Indigenous employee and noted as an Indigenous employee with a job title and everything that comes with that.
I can go first. This is the first job I've had where Indigenous is in the title of the job position. I think in other jobs, like summer student jobs, it's been like maybe an aspect of it, but it hasn't been like the main focus. So I definitely think with being an Indigenous employee, there was like a bit of pressure that I felt where I felt like I was being a representative and I like really wanted to do a good job. And especially at the beginning, I felt a little bit like uncomfortable with the job where I felt like maybe I didn't know enough or I didn't feel Indigenous enough to have this position. But as I've gained like more experience and like gained more confidence, I feel a lot more comfortable in the role and proud to be the Indigenous intern and also like have this role within the library. And it's something that I definitely want to like continue on with.
I think one thing that I found interesting about being in library school as an Indigenous student was that I was learning all about librarianship and everything that goes with that, but I was also like personally learning about, what are my responsibilities as an Indigenous librarian? Like, how can I do right by my community and how can I, do good work for Indigenous peoples in the library space? So I was learning, what was in my classes, but I was also learning things on a personal level about what librarianship means to me and, how I can serve Indigenous communities. The U of A has a really amazing course on Indigenous librarianship, so I'm happy that I was able to take that course and kind of learn firsthand from other Indigenous librarians about that kind of subject. But I think that's a unique thing that, Indigenous students face in library school. Um, and then to be the Indigenous intern, like as an Indigenous employee, I was really proud of that. Like it was nice to be acknowledged for who I am and my identity. But as Michaela was saying, it also kind of came with those feelings of like almost imposter syndrome. Like, do I know enough? Especially when, people would see that title and some people might assume that because you have that title of Indigenous intern that you are kind of all knowing in the realms of everything Indigenous, which is impossible. Like, but I find some people who might not, know very much about Indigenous peoples and cultures sometimes would assume that I know more than I do about communities that I don't have a connection to. So that was its own challenge, but it was also like a learning experience for those people. Like it was a good opportunity for me to explain that, like, yes, this is my title, this is my job title, but I'm a citizen of the Métis Nation, and I know a lot, and I'm learning a lot about my own community, and learning as much as I can about other nations, but I'm not an all-knowing person. So yeah, I think that was a unique challenge.
So being an Indigenous student at the U of M, I've just been so grateful for all of the support from the U of M over the years. It's meant the world to me because I guess being a young Indigenous person, um, you kind of think like you can't have what other people have, or I can't be an Indigenous librarian because I've never even met an Indigenous librarian. And everyone here has just been super inclusive and interested in my ideas and thoughts. And most people are really eager to make changes to indigenize and decolonize UM libraries. And it's been really awesome because I get to point things out and not be scared that I'm going to be shut down or that they're just going to say, oh, maybe, or someday. They're actually like, okay, what are the calls to action that we can do? And yeah, I feel really proud to have a space specifically carved out for Indigenous people here because I have a lot of ideas to share. Yeah.
One of the cool things Claire does is she makes a new book display like every so often. And I'm always like, oh yeah, that's Claire. That's the other intern. Yeah, look at those books. They're like really cool. Um, I have always been a very loud Indigenous person. I know I am Métis, and I will tell you I am Métis, and I live in the frickin' center of the country. I know who I am. And that doesn't stop at work. And one of the really cool things that have happened, like Claire said, is folks come up to me and ask me, how do you properly say these things? Because our land acknowledgement has changed a few times, right? How do you properly say this, right? Should I, oh my gosh, I forgot to put your name on that other thing, but you're an intern and you did this. So I will put that on there. Oh my gosh. And or some other people will be like, of course I'm putting your name on this thing you created, and I'm putting that you're the Indigenous intern, like an Indigenous person helped create this Indigenous LibGuide, Indigenous business. But okay, so I've been in 1 year, 5 classes, two, and then one I just finished. I am a very loud Indigenous person. So when I introduce myself, I'm Métis because of the Delorme. I'm Russell because of my dad, and this is where I live, and blah, blah, blah. And crickets. So I just assume I'm the only Indigenous person in the class. But slowly, 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 I'm like, hey, only Indigenous students got a scholarship this year. I see by your name, standing, running, equal with sun, that you might be Indigenous. Yes, I am. Okay, now I've got 2 people, right? Someone else this summer said it was a storytelling class, and my story was all about being Métis. And someone responded with, thank you for saying that. I don't tell anybody, but I'm Métis. I was adopted though, but I'm Métis. And so finding slowly, slowly the other people who aren't as loud as I am is super important to me so that I'm not going crazy when I say, did we just learn a whole thing about tricksters? And it's the middle of the summer and they've totally got the Métis thing wrong. No, 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 you're not crazy. Because other people like, no. Or did we just go through a whole course on XYZ and not a single Indigenous thing was noted? When people say their land acknowledgements at the top of E-class, but then never acknowledge that, oh my gosh, in Winnipeg, we're dealing with a serial killer. That, oh my gosh, this thing has happened, this thing has happened. It sometimes seems, and I don't expect a professor to know who I am because we're all over the country, but it has definitely felt to me like I was just asked to leave my indigeneity at the door and just come learn all this generic stuff. And we'll probably talk about some Indigenous stuff, but we won't ask you about it. So school is a bit of a grind sometimes. But truthfully, I've got Claire, I've got Lyle and Lisa. I've got that group of 8 folks, and I lean heavily on them. And because the U of M has a phenomenal Indigenous Studies department, I am a dirty shirt in there all the time. And that is more safety for me. And part of being that loud person is that I look for the safety and I look for my community, which is what I'm doing, visiting all these public libraries. There's no Indigenous librarians in them yet, but so I know if the city is a safe place for me to work, which is why I'm visiting other university libraries because, hey, there's another Indigenous librarian at the U of W. I will make her my best friend so that I need the safety and I look for the safety because it's not always, and I feel it. Thank you. I just saw, Lisa, that the person at Charleswood is Métis. We haven't gone to that one yet. We will for sure go to it next. And can I say too that sometimes people look at my skin tone and they're like, really, you're Indigenous? And you have to stomp, 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 stomp and say, I may be one of the people who's just learning, or I may be one of the people who know a bunch, or I may be one of the people who has made this their life. But yeah, don't judge me on my skin tone. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that message, Shirley. I think that's a really important one I know you and I have talked a little bit about me being Métis and growing up on Coast Salish territory, and what does that look like when there's not a lot of visibility for us out here. Yeah, I just want to leave this open in case anyone else on the panel wants to jump in and talk. I think I had a very similar experience in library school to you, Shirley, is like looking for that content and bringing it in, looking for other folks. The person you mentioned at Winnipeg, Winnipeg was in my cohort or in a couple of my classes, which was amazing to connect that way. Yeah, anyone else from the panel?
Did anybody have positive Indigenous experiences
Yeah.
in classes?
I definitely did in the Indigenous librarianship course. There were, the 2 instructors are Indigenous librarians themselves, and then yeah, the other Indigenous intern at the time was in the class with me. So it was nice to have that little community within that class and just to be learning about a topic that was so important to me, and to see that it was, there was an entire course dedicated to that was so, I'm just so grateful for that entire experience. Um, I think I did face some of the same challenges that you mentioned, Shirley, but um, sometimes, when I would bring up Indigenous topics, it was met with mixed feelings. But for the most part, I think fellow students appreciated learning about that other, perspective. I did sometimes get met with awkwardness, like people not knowing how to respond to what I was saying, but um, at the same time, I didn't shy away from that awkwardness. I think it's important to bring those topics up and give people the chance to learn. So
One of the things about being in the library for me, super specifically, is now that I know how the library works, I can tell my mom and my brothers and my cousins, like I am there to learn so that everybody else doesn't have to figure it out on their own.
Mhm. Um, Before we move into the questions for the administrators in the group, we've got a bit of time. And so I just wanted to open it up for the student and former student panelists. If there was any questions that came up that we had asked previously or talked about previously that you want to add any answer to. So just kind of open, and I can move the slides around so that folks can see the question, or we can just leave it here. And if you want to just go back and add anything, or sometimes I know thoughts come to you after you've spoken.
Here's that really loud girl again. I want to say over and over and over and over again that the University of Manitoba did incredible work preparing this opportunity for Claire and I with care. We weren't left flapping in the wind. Very specific by the super awesome Indigenous lead, right? Indigenous community at the library was made. Make sure you know, I didn't go to the U of M for my undergrad, so make sure you know where the student center is, the Indigenous Student Center is. Make sure you know who the elders are. Make sure you know where the calendar is of Indigenous events on campus. And that care really support. I discovered Indian in the catalog, and I didn't know that that was the thing that would blow me up, but it did. And when it did, there was people to support me and people to say, we're going to get through this. So I really think that libraries, public, academic, special, can do this, but you have to do it with care.
I can turn it to the administrative questions if the students are all are done. So there was 5 questions brainstormed for these participants of the panel. Mostly around like sort of the logistics of the internship. So looking at how did you fund them, if you're able to share any details on costs, how did you advertise, sort of like how many applicants did you see, what kind of projects or works the interns have done. I know there's been a lot talked about it, and it sounds really incredible, and the breadth is amazing. I imagine a lot of people on the call are also really interested in what advice you would give to libraries thinking of starting an internship program, and then the different supports offered, and then where you see or how you see the internships evolving in the future. So this will be Anne and Lyle and Lisa. And so I will just open it up to the three of you to share, and I'll mute myself.
Maybe I'll start since we have a newer internship project, and then Anne's got, and they're a little bit different. So Ashley asked the question of the interns about the hours, and because we don't have a library science program here at the University of Manitoba, we had no choice but to do an online program. And like Claire said, we assumed that a lot of the people that would be applying for this would be applying because they wanted to stay in Manitoba. So we were glad that that actually was true. And I'm glad to hear Claire say that that's part of what appealed to her. We started this, I mean, the University of Manitoba, like most Western Canadian universities, have been, reconciliation has been one of the pillars in our strategic plan for quite a while. So we started talking about what we could do in the libraries. And many of you probably know Camille Callison, who's now at the University of the Fraser Valley. I always get that wrong, but I think I got it right this time. Was at the University of Manitoba at the time. So she and I talked about it quite a bit. And we thought that this was the way to go forward. And we purposely made it a 4-day-a-week internship so that the interns would have a day besides weekends to work on their schoolwork. But we wanted to make sure that we paid a living wage because many of us have been poor students and nobody likes it much. So we did our best with that. And then there's scholarships, as Shirley talked about. So for us, it was a more expensive program because we were paying for 4 days of full-time work plus the cost of the program. And textbooks, we've actually tried, correct me if I'm wrong, Lyle and Shirley and Claire, if we can, they need something. We've been ordering it as part of our collection because it's great to be able to add that to the collection. And then we also have a professional development fund that we can buy things with as well. So we took some positions that we had that were vacant and we converted them to these positions. And then we have this amazing endowment fund that actually funds professional development for support staff. So we have 3 unions in the libraries. We have ACES, which is our support staff. We have CUPE, which is instructors at the university and sort of term in the libraries. And we have UMPA, which is the continuing positions for librarians. So the interns were hired under the CUPE contract. So, which is how we did it 4 days a week because UMPA are full-time positions and all the stuff that goes with all kinds of contracts, of course. But so we were able to manage the costs on that. And Lyle can talk more about the advertising and the applicants and that kind of stuff. But maybe Anne wants to Anne, sorry. Maybe Anne wants to talk about the funding first for the University of Alberta program.
As Lisa mentioned, it wasn't as much of a stretch for us because we do hire library school students already to do some of the work that Indigenous interns do, like the public service work, the helping students with research, that kind of work we already have, and we call it the SLIS collaborative program that we already do. So we pay the tuition for the students and the sort of related university fees, and then they work at the library. And generally, the internship is funded for up to 20 hours a week during term time. Just in case we have someone who needs that to be their sort of income that they're really kind of living in as opposed to a kind of part-time sort of university job, and then full-time over the two summers after their first year and their second year. So even though the internship is designed so that it's additional positions, not sort of taking away from our original program, it's not that much of a stretch for us. So that wasn't very, that wasn't really too difficult for us. So it costs about $6,000 a year-ish for the tuition, and then the student employment for the 2 years. And our students, of course, generally go full-time for their schoolwork, and then part-time at the library, as compared with the U of M program, where online students do their program part-time. So it's a bit of a sort of switch in terms of sort of school and work commitments, if that makes sense. And I see there's a couple little sub questions. So but and so I'll carry on, and then I'll pass it back to Lyle and Lisa. So generally, I've sometimes known the students who have become the interns through, I think one of them is on this call, Kayla. Knew as an undergraduate, and some of the other ones I knew as an undergraduate or was in touch with before the program. And our students have to be at the University of Alberta school, because that's our the school within our bigger institution. So that's kind of part of our internship, that's where they go. We haven't generally we've given the internship to mostly all of the applicants who applied. Honestly, we don't get a ton of applications usually. But yeah, so Lyle and Lisa, if you want to continue.
Yeah, I was just thinking about something Leah said about not knowing everything about all Indigenous realities, right? So I'm a quiet Métis, in opposition to Shirley, but so I just started spamming everybody. Like I knew the MMF places to advertise, like the Louis Riel Institute, but then I hit all the universities, Red River College, and then I started identifying band offices and student associations, every place I could think of that might turn up an applicant. I used Twitter, I used Facebook, I used did an interview, I think, for the U of M Today. Word of mouth is what it came down to. In the first round, we wanted to hire 2 interns, but the word hadn't spread enough. So we hired Shirley, and then did another and found Claire. And the applicant pool increased almost by twice. So as word spread, and I still get inquiries now and again, like, is the internship program still available? Right? So it is spreading, which is encouraging. Hopefully we'll get some money to do that again. And I think the advertising, like Claire mentioned, like I didn't know I could be a librarian because I've never seen an Indigenous librarian. I forget the stat just now, but like there was a survey done in 2018, and there were about 1,200 librarians that filled it out. And one of the questions was, do you consider yourself to be Indigenous? And there were about 100. So we just aren't out there, right? So I think that seeing Shirley in place, seeing Claire in place, like people are thinking of it as an option now. Yeah.
Yes, Ashley, I think it was the COPPUL census that we were looking at.
Yeah.
And one of our goals, Manitoba has about 20%, am I right? Indigenous people. So really, we should have 20% Indigenous staff. Shirley's very proud of our 8, but that is nowhere near 20%. So we're trying to build our numbers as much as we can. I was going to skip to the next question about, the next question is what kind of projects, but the interns talked about that. So I thought maybe we could skip over to what advice would you give to libraries thinking of starting an internship program? And I just wanted to jump in and answer that one because Shirley has sung the praises of how well we organized it. And I always tell people, Shirley's like having your first baby. The mistakes happened with Shirley. So hopefully we're doing a better job with Claire because we learned some lessons and thank goodness that we've got Shirley who is willing to say, hey, what about this? So, we were like, what about that? Oh, we need to fix that. So that was great. She's been a very good first child. And that sounds very paternalistic, but it's a joke. But I think having Lyle there in the position to act as a mentor and sort of smooth the way for a lot of things was a huge part of it. We tried to anticipate a lot of stuff and things that we thought would happen maybe didn't happen the way we did. So we went about it a different way. But I think Shirley's right that, putting some thought into it ahead of time and trying to make sure that you've got a good program. And one of our goals was, Claire was saying how everybody tries to recruit her into their type of librarianship. And we really wanted to make sure that they had an experience. So you would know what it was like to be a technical services librarian, and you would know what it was like to be an archivist, and you would know what it was like to be a liaison librarian and work in research support and work in collections so that, one of my things was I came from technical services and not every Indigenous librarian needs to be an Indigenous Studies liaison librarian, right? I can be catalogers or whatever you want to be. So we really wanted to design our program so that people had the opportunity to do that, or to be an archivist, or to be a public librarian. We're really trying to increase the number of Indigenous librarians in Manitoba, although we would love to increase the number of Indigenous librarians at the University of Manitoba. But I would be happy to talk to anybody offline also about, starting this kind of program because one of my goals was that in Saskatchewan, where they don't have a library program, and in Calgary, where they don't, or Lethbridge, or places, if we could get a program so that we had, or public libraries, so that we had a group of Indigenous interns that were going through the program together, that had a group to talk to, that they knew people in their classes right from the beginning, that we could arrange for them to have, monthly meetings or go to conferences or that kind of thing. Because it's always, I think it was Leah that talked sort of about that imposter syndrome thing. And I think a lot of librarians have it, honestly, and it's so much easier if you know somebody who's going to be at the thing ahead of time. So it would be great if we could do that. So happy to talk about this anytime. And I will hand it over to Lyle and Anne and be quiet for a while. I guess I'm on the louder Métis side as well.
I'll just jump in and say, what advice would you give to libraries thinking of starting an internship program? Just do it. Just if it's only 1 or 2 that you can manage, do it. And don't do the librarian thing where you have to have the whole process all figured out. Just figure out the first few steps, right? And then you'll negotiate with the intern as they go through the program. That's my advice.
I actually would like to loop back to the question about the work and projects that the interns have done, because I just want to give a shout out to some of our past interns. We started our program back in 2015. We actually tried to start it in 2014, but the person we identified already had a full-time job plus, and so couldn't actually do it. And I also want to give a bit of an honor to the University of Saskatchewan, who kind of sparked the idea that we had, even though we actually managed to get ours started and sort of on the go before they were definitely the kind of spark of our ideas. Which and we have some of our interns here, but they've done things like subject guides, art installations, as Leah mentioned. They've assessed collections for appropriate and inappropriate content. They've planned conferences. They've worked with First Peoples House, the students there. They've worked with teams like the Indigenous Initiatives team, Decolonizing Description team. they've worked with our Indigenous students group and the First Nations Information Connection libraries, the tribal college libraries in Alberta. So they've done a ton of amazing work. So yeah, so I just wanted to sort of mention some of the things that they've done over the years. They made recommendations for the Faculty Native Studies Reading Room, which has actually led to a project that's happening now to rethink and rework that collection. So yes, they've anyway. So and in terms of advice, I mean yes, like I think, we learn as we go, right? And I think being an Indigenous intern is not necessarily the easiest thing. Like, I think it's been very valuable for people, but to sort of try to ameliorate the less positive things that happen is always a work in progress. And I think, as has mentioned several times, is something that I always say is to have two or more interns in the program at the time has always been. There was a time when we had 3 interns and 2 academic librarian residents, which was great. We had sort of 5 early career librarians together, and that was amazing. And it's really not that difficult to set it up in terms of the logistics. You just sort of hire someone and kind of work out how to make it positive for them, and in a normal kind of position that you probably already have at your library. And yeah, so actually what I was about to say there is actually better in a later question. So yeah, so yeah, I would agree with Lyle. Just yeah, so jump in and do it.
Do you want to keep going, Anne, so I don't talk first again?
Oh, I mean, supporting interns is always, as I said, a sort of work in progress to kind of set them up with mentors that might be useful for them, and make sure we sort of keep in contact and keep a positive relationship. Our interns, as do the U of M ones, have an actual place within a unit. They have office space and that kind of thing, which our other students actually don't. We call them the CSA program, the collaborative program. Actually, students, they just kind of come in and work on the desk and leave. Whereas the interns do have a real home within a unit. We don't have a lot of Indigenous staff at the U of A library. We have some, and we do try to sort of at the moment our interns are in a unit that has those people. And they also, we kind of try to sort of hook them up with First People's House and connections like that. But I would say we have had experiences along the way where interns have had less than positive experiences, not necessarily directly with the library or not necessarily on a large scale with staff, but it hasn't always been a perfectly smooth path in terms of kind of having the interns feel as supported as they need, and that's something that I would definitely sort of advise people to kind of consider during the program.
I'll maybe jump in here and share my screen just to show people what work and projects the interns have been doing and will be doing. Let's see here. I think this is it. Should be seeing a chart. Yep. So So this shows.
Oh, pressed, you have a chart. Look at that.
Yeah, well, yeah, this took some doing, but when Lisa mentioned like um, trial and error, this came about through trial and error. So what we did was we set out dates and months for each intern and in different areas of the library. So, and then we ran it through our management group and everybody's on board with it, right? So you can see 3-month assignments in each department in the libraries. So what I like about this is that it gives the interns exposure to all areas of the library. So archives, electronic resources, USF is user services. I get the acronyms all the time. Fulfillment. Thank you. Yeah, yeah. Different divisions in the library, right? So they can gain some understanding of what is going on. And like Claire says, each will try to convert. But more importantly, I think it also allows different library staff to form relationship with Indigenous people, right? So they demystifies, it builds bridges, it builds community, it builds relationship. So, yeah, I think that's another piece of advice I would give to people. Like try to formalize it ahead of time so that it's not a question of trying to negotiate every few months where they're going to go, because this just becomes an expectation, right? And you can see it's only 3 months.
And I think that illustrates something that cropped up for me recently, is that somebody said to me, what a wonderful program this was, and how it was wonderful that we were doing it for the students. And I said, well, they give to us at least as much as we give to them. I mean, their contribution to the library is significant, and and as you say, sort of forming relationships with other staff members and with other places in the university is just really important, and makes a huge contribution to the library and the things that we're trying to do.
Yeah. I think there's fear on both sides, right? So this presents an opportunity for both sides to get used to each other. I don't like to think about sides, but
yeah. I was going to jump in and say I absolutely agree with Anne that we benefit for sure as much as the interns do. Shirley's done some really interesting projects, and Claire just emailed me with an idea that she has for something that we can work on with the Indigenous Student Center that'll support students. And I was like, sure, can you have a little bit of money? And I was like, absolutely, you can have a little bit of money. So this sounds like a great program, but yeah, we definitely get as much back. And I agree with Lyle, having, people are, once they get to know Claire and Shirley, they're happy to ask them questions like Shirley was saying, like, how do I pronounce this? And, where otherwise they might feel a little not unsure of themselves also. So it's been great.
Yeah.
Ashley, I don't know that we know what the next questions are.
So I'll bring them. I have a question, Lyle, about your schedule. So you have Shirley's in RMA in like January or next semester, and then Claire goes into that department for 6 months. Are they doing a project? Like, do you align when the interns are going into departments with projects, or is that just sort of like how it happened?
I'll speak about what my end is, and then if Claire and Shirley can talk to it too. It's just like, let me see, learning instruction. They know that they're getting Shirley in July, August, and September. And it's up to them and Shirley to negotiate what's going to happen in the 3 months.
And then you see I have a year missing because that was the newborn baby year.
Yes.
In that newborn baby year, Lyle and I just went around and said, I really want to work with you. I really want to work with you. Can I come up to archives for 3 months? And that's so this is really cool now because in my first year, like Claire right now is in user services. It's like, okay, tell me about that. Like take me on a tour, Claire. Like tell me what you're doing. So this is really cool. Yeah. And I just kind of show up and I don't just show up. 3 or 4 weeks before it happens, we start emailing and what do you like to do and what do you want to do and that kind of thing. Right now in learning and instruction, I am making an Excel spreadsheet of all our learning resources at the U of M library. So that helps me because I don't know what all these things are that we have or that we could do.
Yeah. It's cool. Okay. Lisa, to get back to your question, we were sort of at how do you support your interns and how might you see the future of internships evolving?
I don't have a great answer for how we might see them evolving. I think with each intern, the program evolves a little bit. I really liked Anne's the way they used to do it and having, I can't remember what you called them, but having a mix with early career librarians and interns. I think that would be great. I would love to be able to do something like that. Of course, it all depends on budget as we go forward because
Yes, I mean we've had the academic resident program also for quite a few years now, and then at some point we set aside one position for an Indigenous person, and I just want to give Kathleen DeLong a shout out on in that regard because she was definitely instrumental in setting up that whole program. So but then when the year we did that, we had two excellent Indigenous applicants. And so he said, well, we didn't say we'd have only one. So we actually ended up with two of our, I think there were five, I think two of them were Indigenous. So and then so at that point we had a whole little cohort of people, which was amazing for a couple of years. And I think in terms of, I mean, I would really like to see internships for public libraries and also for library technician programs, because I think like a lot of the positions in Indigenous communities are much more suited for a library technician than they are for a librarian. And SAIT, the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology in Alberta has a really good, I think they call it a rural library manager program or something. But one of the librarians at one of the First Nations Information Connection libraries took that program and was able to really kind of strengthen her library. And she in particular didn't need an internship. That wouldn't have been the answer for her. But for future people, like a library technician internship would be so important, like in a public library for a person doing a library technician program or the state rural manager program would be absolutely what the communities need. So in a large public library or a small public library would just be amazing. That's one of the things that I would like to see develop. And as Lisa said, I'd be really happy. I think we both would be, and Lyle and also would be really happy to chat to people about how that might work and how that could happen.
We're actually launching our reconciliation action plan for the libraries at the U of M next week. And one of the things in there is to create an internship for a library technician. So we're excited about that because part of the, like Claire said, we want to see, she didn't see people in the library, we want people to see people in the library and pull them into the profession and make them welcome in the libraries. So that's something we're doing. And then Ashley, with an idea that we kind of got from SFU and after talking to you, we're starting an equity internship program where we're hoping to hire somebody from a historically marginalized group, not Indigenous, because we've got our Indigenous interns set up, but so we're kind of rolling it out a little more broadly than The other thing point that I wanted to make, anybody who's from a unionized environment, was that we did talk to the librarians, and when we put this money towards this, it was something that everybody in the library was on board with. That it wasn't like we stole some money from here to put to there, but we talked about doing this, and everybody agreed that this was a good thing to do. So we really do have, buy-in from everybody that these programs are important. So I think that helps with making people feel welcome and stuff too. So
as a former technician and a sessional in a technician program, that's really exciting that you're thinking of expanding it. And both the BC programs, I believe both of them, but Langara College for sure, are fully online. It's just a FYI, we can chat later if you want.
Sounds good, because our local program has moved to after the pandemic. I think it's on pause still, which is too bad. But
we can talk. I can put you in touch with the head of that program. I am watching time. We have about 10 minutes left for the session. So if all the panelists are feeling good, I just wanted to open it up if anybody in the audience has any questions. And as you're thinking about that, I will hit stop record.